25 new cards from Into the Inklands dropped this week. A ton. So I decided it's too much to do one video. So I'm going to cover today the 12 that dropped before Friday, and tomorrow I'll cover the 13 that dropped just on Friday alone. We are now a quarter of the way through the set, and I'm very excited for set 3. So stick around. DeVille Manor, Corella's Estate, and Neverland, Mermaid Lagoon are both one-cost locations. They both have 4 willpower, 1 lore, and 1 move cost to get to them. To me, these are pretty much the basic locations. They're the equivalents of having the 2 strength, 2 willpower, 1 lore characters for 1 ink that pretty much every ink color actually had during the first chapter. So they're basically the same card, and I think they're going to form the basic locations in the set. So we're going to see if each other ink has a location similar to this. I'm assuming yes, based on the cycle of these types of cards. But let's look at them, because they will form the general basis of how you use locations in your deck. So I would say aggressively, this is a pretty large willpower versatile threat that allows you to start gaining lore right away. The fact that the locations are unaffected by cards like Grab Your Sword or Be Prepared type effects means that your opponent needs to have a diversified answers to your diversified threats. Now, can powerful challengers with Rush still get at them right away? Sure. But at the cost of leaving those threats vulnerable and punching way down below the cost. Remember, these locations ultimately only cost 1. And even though they can be challenged right away, I don't see anything challenging them on turn 1. So you are going to be gaining lore off them and advantage off them immediately. I mean, those characters with Rush, they usually 2 for 1 you anyway. So if they take out a location and are then vulnerable to something swinging into them that's below their cost, they're going to get that 2 for 1 anyway. So really, you're not losing anything, and you're gaining lore at a faster pace. I mean, locations are obviously small combo enablers, all those cards that say when you move to a location, when you're at a location, etc. So I would look at it more like a location being a combo enabler for those types of cards than I would look at them as like some way of just consistently gaining lore over time. Because if your deck was too full of them, chances are there's an easier way for your opponent to deal with them. So I would say attacking on the multiple fronts, the location front and the character front, is going to be best going forward. Aggre Marketplace. Here we have another location. This one costs 3, has 5 willpower, 2 lore, and a 1 cost to move to it. And honestly, some great art. So Aggre Marketplace is like with a stat line for a 2 lore location in this set. 1 to move to, 5 willpower, and the 2 lore. So again, this seems like a pretty vanilla that each color may have in the end as well. Similar to those 1 cost locations we talked to above, you're setting up a larger lore gain with a more varied threat of locations. So everything I pretty much said for them holds true for this as well. You have slightly higher willpower than you did before, so you don't. Madam Mim Fox is not going to take you out in 1 turn, but you are playing on curve with that as well. Again, this gives you a diversified threat. This time, however, you have second lore. The second lore is obviously increasing the cost of these locations by 2 compared to the ones we saw before. So it'll depend on how quickly this affects the ability to close out games, having 2 lore versus 1, and whether it's worth it. To me, these 2 willpower locations set up the win condition type situation for locations, but we'll see how that works in the future. Motunui Island Paradise. So this is a very powerful card. For 2 cost, 5 willpower, 1 to move for it, and 1 lore, I might add, and has an ability of Reincarnation. Whenever a character is banished, while here, you may put that card in your inkwell face down and exert it. I think Motunui Island Paradise is a very powerful location that sets up a true decision point for your opponent. The fact that it has 5 willpower and 1 lore means that not only does it advance your win condition, but it also gives your characters there a powerful ability and a reason to be there. The best thing is your characters don't need to hang out at Motunui the whole time, unless there's a reason within them to actually do that. You can gain the ability right away and use it right away. There's no reason for them to just hang out there. It's basically a one-time effect. So, once you move there, you should probably be using the ability right away. A key point about Lorcana is that while card advantage is important, the ability or challenge or remove characters directly means characters pretty much have a shelf life for how long they're relevant. I think we've seen this a lot in the game when you're talking about shift characters. So you have the small shift character who's relevant in the beginning of the game, and then you shift into a larger character that's relevant in the mid and late game. And that's one reason why when you're looking at shift characters and something that's changed for me, I know this doesn't necessarily have to do with the location, but it's a similar thought pattern, especially when it comes to continuity, is you can't look at losing card advantage when the larger shift character is taken out, because that smaller version of him or her didn't have any effect on the board at that time anyway. If the original form of that character was already outclassed on board, you got more benefit by shifting than just leaving the smaller one out there. And I think continuity is going to form a similar function for all of your characters that outclass as the game goes on. For simply one cost and the 2 costs to play it, you get the additional benefit for having your understated character simply run into the larger characters that are on your opponent's side of the field if they're exerted. So think of this typical scenario. It's turn 3. You have one of your 2/2s with one lore character in play, and your opponent has some type of 3/3 in play. So if you quest, the chances are that you will gain a lore and then turn into a virtual fire the cannons for that 3/3 because they're going to run into it and take 2 damage. What if you could just pay 1 ink before you quested with that character, and then when your opponent's 3/3 took out your 2/2, you actually got something out of the deal, which is putting that character into your inkwell as additional ink. Sure, you have to pay 2 up front to get continuity in play, but the 1 more to move the character to become this Grandma Tala type ability clone seems a pretty low cost to gain all your characters to gain that Grandma Tala ability. If it's turn 6 and you're expecting some type of be prepared to hit from your opponent, move all your characters to continuity, and then all of a sudden when they be prepared, because your characters are still in play, they don't really have much choice but to deal with them. If you can spend part of your turn moving a bunch of characters to continuity, then at that point when they be prepared, you gain a bunch of ink and they don't. It's very similar to what happens when you play Merlin Rabbit or Cusco. I know those are drawing cards, but it's similar to gaining an advantage. Could your opponent just run into Montanui? Sure. But that's why I'd be moving to the location when I know I'm going to be challenging something for value. So it might be worth just playing Montanui and fainting your opponent, having it out there as a threat. That way, there's really nothing they can do. You're going to be gaining an ink advantage as the game goes on, and you gain lore by having Montanui in play. I'd argue, honestly, that Montanui Island Paradise is the most powerful location we've revealed so far, with a combination of both inborn lore and a powerful ability for the characters to call it home. The Sorceress Tower, Wondrous Workplace, is a 3-cost location with 7 willpower, the highest we've seen so far, with a 2 move cost, also equal to the highest that we've seen so far. But it has 2 abilities. It also has no lore, I might add, but it has 2 abilities. The first one is Broom Closet. Your character's name Magic Broom may move here for free, saving that 2 cost. And it has Magical Power. Characters gain +1 lore while here. That kind of mirrors Eye of the Fates from the first chapter. I mean, yeah, this costs 3 and 2 to move to, but Eye of the Fates costs 4 anyway. So for 1 more ink and the ability to use it more often, you're basically gaining the ability of Eye of the Fates. So Sorceress Tower to me is a card that puts you certainly in a direction. It gives all your characters an extra ability, extra lore while there. It's a powerful effect, but in my opinion, it might be just too expensive of a cost to use on things that aren't brooms. So with no passive lore but 7 willpower, you can definitely rely on the Sorceress Tower to be the centerpiece of your broom decks. With a card like Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer, since it requires a lot of effort and time for your opponent to get off the field. Right now, both types of magic brooms, the ones I have on the screen here, the Bucket Brigade and the Industrial Model, are generally understated cards that have strong combo potential with the Sorcerer Mickey. Now, however, you're looking at having each of them having 2 lore, which actually puts them ahead of the curve. Magic Broom will be a 2/2 with 2 lore for 2. Industrial Model will be a 2/3 with 2 lore and resist 1 for 3. They both have excellent stat lines if you have the Sorceress Tower in play. And the fact that it costs 0 to move to them means you're not really paying any additional costs to get there. I mean, does this require a lot of setup and a lot of cards to draw? Sure. But you're building to a powerful mid to late game synergy within, and a lot of the cards are within the same ink. Right now, obviously, Industrial Model is a steel card, but all the other cards are amethyst that you want to play as it is. So this may signal that there's another broom coming. We don't know what color it'll be, but if it's in amethyst, it's definitely going to build a deck on its own with adding whatever color you want. But even if it's within another color, whether it's steel or not, it's going to put you in that direction as well. So we've seen a bunch of locations that have already been spoiled so far. What do you guys think? Some of them have abilities, some of them don't. Leave me a comment below. I want to know what you think of locations. Do you think they're just they're going to be as impactful as the game as I think they're going to be? Are they just going to be the flavor of the week type thing? And if the situation and the metagame works out, then they'll be good for a certain period of time, but they might not have a huge effect. Do you think they're too vulnerable to cards like Mim Fox and Maui hero to all example to really see competitive play. Have we not seen enough to really make a decision? I think some of them we clearly have seen enough. I think the ability is very powerful, but I want to know what you think down below. Smash that like button if you like this type of content. Leave me a comment below what you're thinking about when it comes to locations. Aurelian Gyro Sensor is a 2-cost item that has the ability Seeking Knowledge. Whenever one of your characters quests, you may look at the top card of your deck, put it on either the bottom or the top of your deck. I have to be honest with you, I am not big on this card whatsoever. In fact, I think cards like this are traps.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47. It's a trap.
For most players to even look at. So I think the card like this is a skill tester, and honestly, I think it fails that test. This card has 0 impact on the board and can oftentimes have 0 effect on your draw either. It's not a, quote, inkable Ursula's Cauldron, as I've seen it called, as it doesn't actually dig you any deeper and requires a character you want to quest with to get any value. Sure, it's a cheap item, but it has really 0 effect on the game. I'm willing to be wrong on this, but even if you had powerful cards that you could put to the top of your deck, there are more powerful and flexible cards that you can do that with an upside. I don't understand the upside of this card at all, to be honest with you. Like if you know the top of your card, great. You just draw it and you know it's there. But if it's not there and you choose to put it on the bottom, the card on top is still going to be unknown to you. So you really haven't gained anything other than knowing that the card you had on top, you didn't want to draw anyway. This doesn't actually advance the board at all and doesn't actually help you. Yes, it's a 2-cost item, but you can play, honestly, 1-cost items that have more of effect on the game. I think this card is really bad. I'm willing to be wrong about it if there are combos with it. But honestly, cards like this, to me, in my opinion, just aren't very good. And then along came Zeus, is a 4-cost uninkable song that has the ability deal 5 damage to chosen character or location. Along came Zeus is a card I'm very willing to be wrong about. But my initial impression is that this is kind of a jack of all trades and a master of none. Is it powerful? Yes. Is it flexible? Yes. But it's not free, per se, from a deck building cost, even if you're singing it. Because you need to be gaining a powerful advantage because Steel is already full of uninkables. You have Grab Your Swords. If you want to play Fire the Cannons, you have Let the Storm Rage On. I mean, Pinpoint Removal is honestly, in the end, just a 1-for-1. And if you sing this, it's going to cost you a 4-cost character or a singer, if you're able to. And that's going to take up most of your turn anyway. So what kind of tempo are you actually gaining out of this? Being able to trade on curve or below with this card. I feel you're just paying a high deck building cost for the flexibility that this card offers, and you'd likely have to cut a more powerful uninkable to play it. If locations become very popular, you may need this type of flexibility. So I ultimately assume this card will have some place, probably not as a 4 of, but maybe as a 1 or 2 of in most decks. I just think it's extremely inefficient, even as a song. I mean, 5 damage does not even deal with all locations on curve. We've seen some that have 4 that this doesn't take out. We've seen some with 3 that this doesn't take out. So if you're singing this, are you even gaining enough tempo? I do think Along Came Zeus is a powerful combination with cards like Rapunzel, Gifted with Healing, or Hades, Lord of the Underworld. 4-cost characters that are more played for their coming into play abilities than they are for their ability to challenge, and their stats are pretty weak. So there, I can see where you're making a card that once it hits play, more powerful. But is it worth the uninkable slot? That's the real question. And I will say, I've seen a lot of people saying Sebastian Court Composer, this is finally a song that he's going to be able to sing. Listen, that's a 2-2 for 2 that's going to get taken off the board by Let the Storm Rage On left and right. So maybe if we get a better singer 4, we can see play. Even the singer 5s that cost 3, I'd rather have them sing this song. But honestly, I believe this card is just a jack of all trades and a master of none. And in the end, I just think it's probably going to be it's probably just not going to be powerful enough unless you need that flexibility to take out characters or locations. And if we do, you just have to find room for another uninkable in your deck. Dela Duck, Unstoppable Mom. She's a 2-cost, uninkable, 3 strength, 3 willpower, with the ability, no lure, of course, with the ability with Reckless. So similar to the Simba Rightful King, which we're going to see in a minute, Dela Duck, Unstoppable Mom, she's, by the way, she's the mother of the triplets in Donald Duck's sister, which I had no idea until this card came out. I had to look it up myself. She's very close to being playable, but in the end, I just think the uninkable nature of her on this well-statted card is going to keep her down. If you're going to be a powerful uninkable, if you're going to be uninkable, period, Reckless, you just can't have that ability because you have to be able to gain card advantage when you have an uninkable every single time. Unfortunately, the ubiquitous nature of Madam Ming Snake in the metagame, I just can't see you wanting to have an uninkable answer to an inkable card in Madam Ming Snake. Yes, is Madam Ming Snake too powerful? Likely. But I mean, that's the world we're living in. And I don't think you just want to be playing like an uninkable answer to an inkable card when it comes to that card. Simba Rightful King. He's a 5-cost inkable, 4 strength, 6 willpower with 1 lore that has the ability Triumphant Stance. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, chosen opposing character can't be challenged during their next turn. He's a decent stat line for a 5-cost character, but without Rush, I just think that he just can't be the protective presence you actually want him to be. He may force your opponent to keep certain characters from acting on their turn for fear of shutting down both that character and another character the next turn, because you're probably going to challenge and banish one character, and then you're going to cause another character not to be able to challenge. But without Rush, that ability is going to be so telegraphed that your opponent's probably just not going to play into it. I mean, basically, you're giving another character, if it doesn't have Reckless, they can just quest instead. So, like, what are you really giving it? I mean, I think this card definitely needs a card like White Rabbit's Pocket Watch to really be effective. Maybe Pick a Fight would work with this card as well. But I'm not really sure the payoff's there, because all you're doing is preventing them from challenging, not preventing them from like challenging and questing. So I just don't think there's enough payoff for what you have to set up to make this card work. Jim Hawkins Thrillseeker. He's a 2-cost inkable, 3 strength, 2 willpower, 1 lore for 2. I mean, he's pretty vanilla. I assume this telegraphs we're going to have a Jim Hawkins shiftable card. But in the end, I even think that's probably not going to be powerful enough. 2 willpower has proven to be a huge detriment to playing a card, and I don't think this card is going to see play in any way, shape, or form, even if there is a powerful Floodborn version. I just think this one's too vulnerable, and you leave yourself open to too much removal to make it work. I do like the art, though. It is pretty cool style. If you stuck with me this far, I really appreciate it. If you're looking the best way to support the Forbidden Mountain, the best thing you can do is smash that like button, subscribe if you hadn't already subscribed. But if you're looking for other ways to support us that don't cost you a dime, if you're already buying singles on TCG Player, we have a TCG Player store. This is the QR code up here. All we ask is that if you want to buy cards and you're looking for decent prices, just buy from our TCG Player store instead of buying from us on Marketplace. It saves us on fees. It doesn't cost you any more money. Prices are exactly the same. But if you go directly to the store, it really helps us out. We've been selling a ton of Lorcana singles. We've been helping a ton of people. You can see the feedback below and how many sales we've had in just a short period of time. So we really appreciate it if you are going to buy any singles on TCG Player and you're looking for decent prices and you want to buy from us. Just use our TCG Player store instead of buying straight from the marketplace. It really helps us out. And again, if you haven't smashed that like button, please do. And thanks for supporting us. And please leave a comment below as to what you think of this week's cards. Again, I'm going to cover the rest, all those reveals that happen on Friday tomorrow. But in the meantime, let me know what you think of these below. The last card today is probably my second favorite card of the day, which is Morph Spacego. He's a 2-cost inkable, 2 strength, 1 willpower, 1 lore with the ability Mimicry. You may play any character with shift on this character as if the character had any name. So ever since he was leaked early on, he's had massive hype. The ability to be any shiftable character on turn 2 is powerful, but he's offset by having just a terrible stat line. That 1 willpower is a real problem. So let's start with Morph's potential, shall we? On the screen are the shift characters you want to shift to on turn 3 that don't have already versions that are lower cost for you to be able to shift onto on turn 3. So you have Fairy Godmother, Mystic Armor below. You have Belle, Hidden Archer. You have Beast, Tragic Hero. And out of the same set, you have the Moana, Born Leader. So you can use Morph as an on-color backup for your other lower cost shift targets as well in Emerald, both Belle and, for example, like the Flynn Rider. You can use them as a backup if you want in that situation as well. I think using him as a universal backup for your other Floodborns is another way of using him that's probably most powerful. I think trying to rely on him to get any of the cards on the screen out early as your only way of getting them out there and having your deck revolve around getting these cards out there on turn 3 is probably going to be a mistake. I think using Morph Spacego as a backup ability to shift any of these characters, other characters that aren't on the screen, for example, onto is probably the better way to go. The main issue with Morph is that he's pretty much banished by a stiff wind. He only really has a 1-turn window to get these Floodborns on him before he's definitely going to be taken out by various AoE effects, and you really can't do anything with him. It's not like he has Ward. It's not like he has Evasive. So you can't actually challenge with him. So the longer he sits on the field, he's obviously going to be taken out by something as the game goes on. He can't really challenge. Can't really use him to challenge into opposing characters. His stat line isn't even good at that. So what are you supposed to do with this character unless you're shifting one of these onto him? So in the current metagame, basically the willpower threshold to be a playable card is 3. If you're playing a card with 2 willpower in order to shift onto it, you have to know something like, Little Stitch or the Queen. You have to know that those cards are vulnerable to be being taken out unless you can get the shifted versions onto them faster than your opponent can take them out. So what are you supposed to do in this situation where he only has 1 willpower? I mean, it's bad enough that the 2 willpowers are being taken out by Teethed Ambitions, Let the Storm Rage on, Fire the Cannons, or sometimes I've even seen people shift and immediately grab your swords to be able to take that advantage away from your opponent. So the popularity of these removal-based actions is the one reason I don't think you can ever rely on Morph as your starting point for a Shift 3 deck. In other words, like, I don't see Bell Hidden Archer really, having a coming out party because of Morph. Because you simply can't rely on it. So you would have this dead card in your hand if your Morph gets taken out either on curve or slightly below it. So I think you need to worry about him and play him as a universal shift target, as a backup for a lot of the other shift targets that are out there. For example, not everyone plays like, the little Tinkerbell when they play Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. Obviously, there's no beast targets, but you're still going to play Beast Tragic Hero in your deck. So any of these cards that are Floodborns that you are going to play anyway, I think Morph can be a good backup or primary shift, although when shift isn't what you're typically trying to do with it. I mean, I've never seen anyone actually shift Tragic Hero onto another one, for example. Things like Lady Tremaine. You no longer have to play the 2-drop Lady Tremaine if you're going to play Morph as your backup. You don't have to play Lady Tremaine for 6. If you can shift her on for 4, that's great. So Morph just gives you another option. I think low cost powerful removal is always going to be in the format. There's probably additional ones that are going to be in the set. So as often as we get good Floodborns from Morph to shift onto or to shift onto Morph, we're also going to get that low cost removal as well. Well, I think he's a very good card. I think there's a lot that you can do with him. I think he's best as a backup plan, and I'm not really sure Emerald can afford that right now, but we'll see. He's definitely going to be a fun card. He's definitely going to see a lot of play, but I definitely think using him as a universal backup for your Floodborns to shift onto is going to be the better way of using him versus just relying on him surviving to turn 3 after you play him on turn 2 to be able to play something like Bell Hidden Archer or play Tragic Hero on 3. Still play those cards if you want to, but don't expect them to hit the field on turn 3 because you can't expect Morph to survive. You can also use them as a late game in order to basically have these cards gain like pseudo rush or the ability to quest right away, but I don't see that being as like that great use of 2 ink and a 2/1. You'd have to protect him with something like Fang, move him to that type of location in order to get that kind of effect on him. That's a ton of cards that I just went over, and that was only most of the week. I even know one that I have to put in tomorrow's video because I know it's not on here. So before you mention in the comments below, I know 99 Puppies is in here, and it's going to be talked about next time. So come back tomorrow as I talk about all the cards that were revealed on Friday and 99 Puppies. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button if you haven't already and hit that like button for me. I really appreciate it. And again, leave your comments below. What do you think of locations? What do you think of this first batch of cards? What are you still looking forward to? We have a quarter of the set revealed. Can't wait to see more.